Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Impact Wrestling fans here for another Impact Wrestling review. It went down last night, ladies and gentlemen, as we are on the build to Slammiversary. Feel free to hit that subscribe button if you want more Impact Wrestling reviews, excuse me. So first up, got the nice video montage. I'm recapping the events of last week, and we were off with Cousin Jake versus Ace Austin. Excuse me today. What we got here was a pretty good opener. I gotta say, the first thing I noticed was around the ringside, something I didn't like, the concrete around the ringside. Like, I think they have to find a way to get more padding around that. I was worried for the safety of the guys that do the topes and the lopes. But looking at this match, we got a decent opener. I was pleased with it. Cousin Jake, for a big guy, a relatively big guy, he can really move around. He's kind of bordering on the new age big guy that can really move around with the smaller guys. What we got here was a nice match. Ace Austin, I think that guy should be the face of the X Division in the future. I enjoyed this one. We got some nice spots. The spot where it looked like Ace Austin was going for a springboard disaster kick only to get a club to the head from Cousin Jake was just sick. They might as well have ended the match right there. But as the match unfolded, we got some interference from the Desi Hit Squad. They came down, they distracted Jake, they distracted the Deaners, and Ace Austin would go on to pick up the victory due to that interference. I guess we got ourselves a few Desi Hit Squad versus the Deaners going forward. And we'll see how that all turns out. Moving on, next up, we had a non-title match, Taya versus Rosemary. I honestly think this should be a title match. Like, I thought that we were on the way to Rosemary getting her way back to the Knockouts Championship, but turns out it's not. What we got here was a really good match to start off. It didn't go very long because Jessica Havoc would return, and man, James Mitchell comes down. He brings out Jessica Havoc, and I'm like, whoa, all right. And Jessica Havoc just wrecked house. She took out Rosemary. Taya tried to escape. She took out Taya, and they set Su Yung free. Thank goodness, because whatever they got going on with Rosemary and Su Yung, that was doing no favors to any of them. Like, it was shackling Rosemary. I was making Su Yung look real weak. Thank goodness that is over. Now, maybe both of them can move on. Obviously, Jessica Havoc versus Rosemary, I'm into that. I want to see that. And whatever they do with Su Yung, I'm down for that too. So long as it's not her being shackled up somewhere. Next up, we had the Rascalz. And they were hanging out. Trey thought that he was in the match, but turns out you're not in the match, buddy. So he went to drink eventually. Got another great Rascalz segment. Moving on, we had Eddie Edwards backstage with the Sandman. Like I said last week, enough with the ECW originals, and we didn't really have the ECW originals on this week. They didn't really take place outside of this segment. We had Eddie Edwards saying that he couldn't accept the cane because it's not Kenny. Sandman drew a face and made it Kenny 2.0, and Eddie Edwards was all for it. All right, it's Kenny 2.0, I guess. Moving on, we had a really nice video package of Brian Cage getting himself ready for Slammiversary. And I'm so happy to have that guy back. I miss that guy so much. Michael Elgin cut a promo on him saying that, you know what? Doesn't matter what Cage does. He's better. He's better at lifting, and he's going to be better than him at Slammiversary. And he said that he'll bring Mac to the hospital next week. That should be a phenomenal matchup. Next up, we had Madman Fulton, and what we got here was a Madman Squash. I gotta say that I like how they are building up Madman Fulton. First he came down, and Sami Callihan is getting a Prince Devitt Bullet Club entrance on top of the shoulders of Madman Fulton. And like I said, going back to it, I like the way they're building him up, just slowly, a bit at a time. It's the classic way to build up a big guy, a traditional big guy. Throw in some smaller jobbers, let him wreck house. And that's what we got here. Madman Fulton wrecked house, and he moves on. And we'll see what feud he gets into from here going forward. Next up, we had Falaba and Scarlett versus Jake and Dave Chris. And this was a decent enough match. Falaba did the heavy lifting for Scarlett Bordeaux. Jake and Dave Chris did the running around. They made Falaba look good, basically. And once Scarlett got in, she is a fantastic wrestler, as we've come to know and love. She ran wild. We had some nice spots in this match. The Scarlett Bordeaux Doomsday Device that got a near fall. That was really good. A nice ode to the Road Warriors. And I thought that this was a decent enough match. OVE would go on to pick up the victory with a roll of quarters. Dave Chris hit Falaba with a roll of quarters, and that got the victory. Started off, but it picked up decently enough to where I enjoyed it. After the match, OVE was about to lay the beat down on Scarlett, but that would bring down Tessa Blanchard. Surprisingly enough, she comes down, the crowd goes wild. She makes the save, and she hit the magnum on Jake Chris. She stood tall, and I gotta say that for as much as I champion Tessa Blanchard as a heel, like I wanted her to stay there. She's so good and condescending as a heel. And at first I'm like, don't turn her face, but the crowd is all over her as a face. And I'm gonna sit there and I'm gonna say, you know what? Go ahead, run with it. If the crowd loves her that much, go ahead with it. Tessa Blanchard as a face, the best overall women's wrestler on the planet. I've said it for months, I've said it for weeks, and I'll continue to say it again. The best, the walking mean streak, Tessa Blanchard, the face. How about that? So Willie Mack, after that, cut a promo. He talked about Michael Elgin. He said he wasn't sending him to the hospital, and Rich Swann talked about how he would have his back, but Johnny Impact would come into this promo, this interview. He would talk about how he would take some weight off of Rich Swann at Slammiversary. He would take the X Division title off of Rich Swann. So that's something to look after. That should be a phenomenal match, a candidate for match of the night at Slammiversary, even though I don't know why Johnny Impact is in the X Division. I thought that was kind of a waste. They could have given it to somebody else, but hey, that's just me. It should at the least be a phenomenal match. Next up, we had Sami Callihan yelling at OVE. He was upset that Tessa Blanchard took out the Chris, and he said that they would get their revenge on Tessa Blanchard. We'll see how it goes going forward. Obviously, this is probably setting up another intergender match. Like, I don't have problems with intergender matches whatsoever, but as it pertains to like a Scarlett Bordeaux, I want to see her in the X Division do her thing. Tessa Blanchard, I want to, excuse me, not the X Division, the Knockouts Division. I want to see her do her thing in the Knockouts Division. Tessa Blanchard, I want to see her do her thing in the Knockouts Division. I don't have a problem with intergender matches whatsoever, but I want to see those girls do their things in the Knockouts Division. Next up, we had Jordynne Grace versus Kiera Hogan. I gotta say that I like the new attitude from Kiera Hogan. You know what? It's kind of going decent for her throughout her run, but they had a change in her attitude. And you know what? I'm gonna give it a chance, and I'm very interested in it. We had a spot here where Jordynne Grace did a senton from the middle rope. I thought she just broke poor Kiera Hogan in half. That got a 2 count. But this match was pretty good overall. You got the smaller Kiera Hogan versus the powerful Jordynne Grace. They make for a good tandem, have great chemistry, and I enjoyed this match very much. Jordynne Grace will go on to pick up the victory with the Grace Driver. She needs to be calling that move the Fall from Grace. That's just my opinion. Like, somebody needs to put a bug in their ear. Like, that's nothing wrong with the Grace Driver, but the Fall from Grace is just perfect. That beside the point, Jordynne Grace picks up the victory, and I don't think we've seen the end of Jordynne Grace versus Kiera Hogan. We'll see as it goes forward. LAX was in the back, and they were talking about their match with the Rascalz, and Conan was getting on them because they were taking their challenges lightly. And I gotta say that this was a decent enough promo to set the stage for the main event. Going forward, we had Moose, and he cut a pretty good promo as well. He was standing in the dark outside. He challenged RVD to a match at Slammiversary, and I will be the first to say that I hope Moose is picking up this victory. I don't think he will, but we'll see as time goes forward. Maybe I'll change my prediction on that, but I hope RVD is here to put over a younger wrestler. We'll see. Next up, we had the main event. LAX versus the Rascalz, and looking at this match, you think two things. This is going to be a ridiculously great match. And two, I thought, man, I wish they would have saved it for Slammiversary, but it is what it is. That may still happen. I'll get into that. But what we got here was a phenomenal match. It started off quick, fast, early. There's no need to build into anything. These are 4 fast wrestlers. And what we got here was a fast match. The Rascalz controlled early on with multiple double team moves. And I gotta say that I enjoyed their stereo topes over the ropes. And this was a phenomenal match, man. I enjoyed it very much. We had even LAX, when they took control, they got in it with double teams as well. And a phenomenal match with great spots, with great near falls. When the Rascalz hit that double team moonsault, push moonsault that they have, I thought that was going to be the end of the match, but it wasn't. At the end of the match, however, Trey Miguel jumps in, and as the ref was blinded, and he decided to jump in, he got a pinfall, and Kid Ref came in for the count, and he counted out LAX, and the Rascalz would seemingly go on to pick up the victory, but the original ref would come in and reverse the decision. The champions, LAX, would win by disqualification, and I gotta say, I don't mind that whatsoever, because this sets up the rematch at Slammiversary. I think they're gonna get even more time at Slammiversary. It's gonna be a phenomenal match. So, looking at this episode of Impact overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty good episode. I wouldn't go and say it was a great episode, but a pretty good episode. I felt like I wasn't wasting my time whatsoever. A phenomenal main event, and we had some great things to set up Slammiversary as well. So let me know your thoughts on Impact Wrestling, whether that's in the YouTube comments or on Twitter at 2SweetPod or at OMG Corey B.